So he spent many years building, ever since then, been building settlements.
Does anybody know Kurt Shibuni? Offhand? It was on the opening page to the Levi, I don't know why.
Gershon ben Mordechai.
Gershon ben Mordechai. And he should be a mill. The same way he advocated to apply so much on this world, he should be continue to be a military treasurer for us all. This world, and the next world, and especially for his family. Okay, let's see the head of the Gemara. So yesterday we were discussing the shaila of whether or not it would be considered a mekach tos if she was a mukasech, if she was enveloped by a katana, if that would be a mekach tos in marriage. And the Gemara brought from Rava, who originally said that maybe according to the Rabbanan it would be a mekach tos. The Gemara feared that Rava was choizer from that, and Rava must hold that it's never a mekach tos. A mukasech would not be a mekach tos, and neither would a bu'ula if she was enveloped by someone who was under 9 years old. Just to refresh our memories, because it's going to be relevant in today's Gemara, let's quickly rush through the Mishnah that we learned on Yud Aleph, and then we'll continue on. Agadol shabalak tana, v'katan shabalak doila, umukaseis, k'zubasam asayim diver meir, and the Gemara made a shtigla chasur mechzera and said that a katan shabalak doila and a mukaseis are both the same, and k'zubasam asayim, and the chamayim mukaseis k'zubasam mana, and therefore katan shabalak doila is also k'zubasam mana, and that was totally in a machlokes of whether or not katan habalak tana also mukaseitz. But based on Rabbi Yehuda Marav, it makes it the mukaseitz. Shmuel Hal didn't make it the mukaseitz. So the question is the bia of a katan like a mukaseitz or not? That was one of the questions. Then the next line in the Mishnah is really what's most relevant to today. Basula, if there was a basula, but she was also an almana. Grusha b'chalucha bin hanasuin. So even though she was a nasuan, she was in a relationship that should have led to bia, but we know that she's a basula. Ksubas admana. The ksubas telamana, and Rashi says, im nisas lacher, if she got married to somebody else, saying she's a basula, but she lost her husband on nasuin. Thank you so much. But she lost her husband on nasuin. Ksubas admana. Why the becheskas beula kaima mishanichnas on the chuppah? She's considered a beula when she goes to the chuppah, even though there was not actually a beula. And there's different stories as to why that is, which we'll see. So basula almana grusha b'chalutza and ksubas almana. In other words, they're not considered halachically a basula, and therefore the ein lahen tainus basulim, and therefore there cannot be a taina of basulim. And Rashi says that means lahafsida oisa mana. He can't say that it's a mekach tos. I thought that you were a basula because that's what you told me, and you really are a bula. Because once someone's in the suah, he already loses her status of basula. And again, there's different reasons for that. I'm going to just quote them from memory now. One is there's three reasons. One is because once she's in the suah, in his mind, even if there's any other type of proof that she's a basula, he discounts that proof, and he thinks that maybe, like the next mission is going to discuss, even if she had Adam, that she was still a basula. He doesn't take that seriously. Maybe that you're saying it to be mashabecher, but in his mind, she's perceived as a ba'ula. That's why he can't say he was expecting a basula. The other reasons that are offered by the Rishonim is even one story in the Rishonim is, even if in fact she is a basula, but once she's nesua, she has that, she loses that luster, she loses that mila of a basula that people jump for, that people would pay more for, and that's why he cannot taina that it's a mekach tos. I forgot the third reason, but maybe we'll run into it when we get to the Gemara. So once again, these are all women who we suspect that they're b'ulais. Again, ksubas and mana ve'inam tainis basulim, because when the person married this woman, it wasn't under the expectation that it was going to be a Basula. Okay, so let's see the Gemara back. Tanu Rabbanan. Kansa Rishon L'Sum Nesuin. The first marriage had a Nesuin, but the Yeshla Edim Shaloi Nistira. So this is a bigger raya that she is a Basula, because there's Edim that they never secluded together. Inami Nistira V'Loishasa Kadebia. Or they were Nistira, but they didn't wait long enough that there could have been a Bia. Ein Hasheni Yochel Lita in Tainis Basula. The Sheni cannot say, I expected a Basula, and now she's a Baula. Why? Sharei Kansa Rishon. Because the first husband made Nesuin. Rashi says, V'alav Ladas Shenivala. He should have known that she was Nivala, or at least that should be the expectation, even though there are Adam saying to the contrary. Tosfos says later on, not directly referring to this, but explaining this, Sharai Kansa Rishon, Vadaita de Be'ulanisis. When he took her, even though there's Adam that says that it was Lo Nisyachta, they weren't Yachid, he still in his mind looks at her like a Bula. He doesn't rely on them. Since there was Nisuin already, the Savar de L'Shabcha Ayrim came. That's what I was telling you before. He discounts what the Adam said, that she's not a Ba'ula. Maybe they were just trying to praise her and make her more desirable. But once it's Nesua, he doesn't trust him. The other tradition that I mentioned to you was that even if he knows she's not Nevelas, but she loses her Maila of Basula at that point. Omarava, Zoysemers, we can deduce from here that Kansa Becheskas Basula, even though when he took her in, he assumed she was a Basula because of the Edom. And Rashi said, the Havada Becheskas Basula Kansa, the Samach Edom. He was relying on the Edom. The Nimtis Ba'ula, and it turns out that she was a Ba'ula. Yesh lo Ksuba Mana. She still gets a Ksuba Vamana, which is what a woman who is an Almana normally gets. Lafuki Megach Toish, that's correct. So Rashi says, so let's finish up Rashi. The Avadi Becheskes Psula Kanta, the Samach Edom, the Ka'amar Ein Yochalav Sida Mana, her royal Almana, and Anasu. Azoivad, she gets what she would get as an Almana. Rabbi Ashi Omar, Rabbi Ashi says from this brisa, you don't have a raya. Because Ba'alma la'olam emelach less klal. Normally, in the normal case, she would not get anything at all. It is a mekatah. The shiny hacha, the only reason why over here by Nesua, we say that it's not a mekatah is Shavei Kansa Rishon. So normally, if someone married a woman, assuming that she was a basula and she turned out she's a ba'ula, that's a mekach. He doesn't owe her anything. This is a different type of expectation. This is an expectation after a nesuin, like Tosha said, like Rashi says, that's not as strong of an expectation. Why? Sharei Kansa Rishon, so in the back of his mind, he knew that maybe she's not really a basula, and therefore it's not a mekach only in this case. But in the real case, it would be a problem. I'm sorry? Rabba. I'm mixing up community. Tosha says, right. Right, even in the second, even in the first marriage, and that's why Basha is no raya from Nesua, because Nesua is a second marriage. Back to Mora.
Why would Rabbi say that it's
not? Rabbi because Rabbi doesn't make that distinction. He says even though she was a Nesua, but we know she's a Basula. She said she was a Basula. He was Kansa, the Cheskas that she was a Basula, and it's not a Mekach. So he doesn't see the distinction of Rav Ashi. And he also, if it's like this over here, it's like this even in the first marriage. It's only Rav Ashi who makes that distinction that since she was already a Nesua, so it's not really such a strong expectation. But Rabbi doesn't necessarily hold of that. So that's what. So,
I don't think
This
Rabbi's
is the
talking about
classical
a case
case.
where.
The person gets married.
well, Rabbi wants to bring a raya from this case that it applies everywhere. Frank the Gemara. I mean, that's why I understand. Maybe I'm wrong, but what else is Rabbi talking about? Rabbi Ashi says, Avada, in the case of Nesua, you don't have that time.
This is Fleur, Rashi says Fleur, the Samach Eid, which Eid?
The Edom that we said in the Bryce on the bottom of the base.
First marriage.
Correct.
The Rabbi is talking about a second marriage. Not a first marriage.
Yeah, but Rabbi Ashi is making a chiluk. Rabbi Ashi is saying it only applies when she was in a sewer before.
Maybe just explain.
But she wasn't in the sewer. No, Rabbi Ashi is arguing around. Rabbi Ashi is arguing around. So, but the problem is, so let's see the Gemara. Let's see the Gemara. Correct the Gemara, based on this, based on what Rashi is saying, is then the Nechish Shema Zinsa, Shema Tachto Zinsa. So Rashi says, beautiful. Amas Nisan, or Bryce of the Gatani Eina Sheni, Yocha Litain, Tainus Basum. We just said that the Sheni cannot make a Tainus Basum. Veloy Maskinan lay, Veloy Maskikinan lay, Love Lebez. We don't make him come to Bez. He's not going to be Mafsed or Ksuba anyway, Tasha says. He can't be Mafsed or Ksuba anyway, because she still gets her Ksuba. So he's not going to come to Bez. So why aren't you concerned? Then Veloy Yisbar Adover Tachtov Zitza Imloy. According to Rashi, at the beginning of the parak, why do we make people get married? Why do we make them sue on Wednesday night? So that he should be very upset and then come the next day to Bez. And then they would be able to be Mavar, even though Rashi says it's a Svek Sveika. But once they come to Bezin, should there be Edom of his Nus, if it was in Satachtov, we'll verify that. But once you're saying that he keeps she still gets the Ksuba, and it's not a Mekach Tois, so he's not going to, what's he going to come to Bezin for? So, V'lo Yisbarim Tachtov Zinsem Loy. V'shem Asura he loy. Maybe she's really offered to him, and he's not going to come to Bezin because it doesn't impact him. Bishlama hanach the Umbron. Bishlama before when we said Kanta b'cheskos basula, v'nimtis beula, yesh laksuba. If you hold she has her ksuba, loy makshina. Then it's not shver. The ikala meimar kishabala bezin. When he comes to bezin, ubo edim shezitza kodim lachem. In the earlier cases, what happened? It turns out she was zinza kodim lachem, and the question is, is it a mekach tos or not? Because he's claiming that it happened before, and therefore it was a mekach tos. But over here, here we're saying that he cannot tie tainus psulim at all. Once he marries a Nesua, there's no more tainus psulim. So that means he won't come to Bezin. But sometimes there could be a problem that maybe he was in Tzatachta. Maybe in fact she was a Basula, because she was never novellas to her first husband. And after his Kedushin, that's when it happened. But he's not going to come because you've already removed from him the whole time of Tainus Pasulim. So now we have a problem. If you're supposed to fully investigate a chance that maybe she was in Tzatachta, here you're not going to do that. Why are you not going to do that? Because regardless, he still has to give tshuva. No, because we're talking about in the case of Nissus. If it was Nissus, she gets the tshuva mana no matter what. So if she gets the tshuva no matter what, so even if he finds that she's a bull, he won't say anything. But you still have the chashash. Maybe it was in Tzatachta. So I'm Rab Shravya could go and Chekida Shubola alter. The only time, so now we have to qualify our last Mishnah we learned and the Bryce that we learned. The only time we say that there's no Tainus Basulim is only if by the second marriage it was like the marriages today. Well, right after the Kedushin, they go and make Yichud. So therefore, there would have been no opportunity for her to have been Zinsa between her Kedushin and him Nesuah. And then it's only a question of the Tzuba, so therefore he doesn't have a Taina of Basulim. So that was this Shakla Bataya, where Rabbah wanted to bring a raya that Kanta Becheskos Basula, Benimtis Bula, Yesh Laksuba Mana, and Rabashi holds it would be a Mekach Tos. There are those who learned that Rabbah wasn't Medayik this from the Brisa that we learned. Rather, Rabbah was Medayik from the last Mishnah, where he was Kansa after her Nesuin, but there were no Edom that said that there was no Yichud. It was just Nesuin, and and she says there was no bia. Vikadamasila amasnisin. Besula almana grusha chaluta menanisun. Ksubas and mana veinam tanis besula. Zokt Gemara. Besula menanisun heich mishkachas law. What is the case of the last Mishnah of Besula menanisun? It's going to nichnas aluchava v'lay nivala. They went luchava, but there was no bia. But there's no edim like we had in the Bryce at the bottom of Amud. So I guess she's saying it was lay nivala. Omar Rabba, commenting on the Mishnah rather than commenting on the Bryce that we had at the bottom of Amud Beis, Rabba's comments were actually on the Mishnah. Zoyse Meres, Kanta Becheschas Psula, the Nimtas Peula, Ksuba Samana. And on that, Rabashi says you don't have a riot. Maybe it's a Mekach Tos, the Shiny Acha, only the case of Nesuah is different, because she was already Nichnas Aluchah. So the Gemara asks the same question. Once you're removing the tinus of Basulim, how do you deal with a legitimate problem that maybe she was into Tachtav after he was Makadasher before the Basulim? Alech Hashem Matachtav Zimsa. Rab Shravya could go into Kidesh Ubala Alter. You have to qualify the Mishnah that when the Mishnah says Ein Latanus Basulim, it doesn't mean Ein Latanus Basulim. It means if there was a Kedushin and right after that there was a Nesuin, only then Ein Latanus Basulim. Mandamastala Braisa, the first Nusach that we had, where Rabbi commented on the Braisa, his Raya, that she still has a Ksuba Mona. If it was Nicholas Contra al Das Besula, it ended up being a Beula, she gets a Mona. And Rabbi Ashi said, no, it's a Mekach Tos. For sure, it would be appropriate to say the same diak on the Mishnah and with Rabbi Ashi's response on it. But in the second Nusach, where we're discussing this whole thing around the Mishnah, where there was no Eidim, it's just that she said, even though I was Nesua, I'm still a Basula. Avala Braisa loy. You know why? Where does Rabashi Svara agree that it's not a Mekach Tos in our Mishnah? Because in our Mishnah, he wasn't really relying on her when she said even though I was in the Suah, I'm still a Basula. He didn't really rely on it. That's why over there it's not a Mekach Tos. But maybe in the Bryce's case, where not only did she say that I was not a Beula, but you have two Eidim that said they were not Miyachid. So maybe then he really assumes that she's really a Basula, and he really thinks that. And maybe then you wouldn't be able to say that she was Nesua, because he could say I'm not Eidim Samchi. So maybe Rav Ashi would agree that you'd have a riot. Maybe Rav Ashi would agree you have a riot from this Brycer, because even though he had Eidim, we still said it wasn't a Mekach Tos.
She would have to lose it. So then after them looked at that, she doesn't lose it.
So Rav Ashi would have to agree to Rabba's riot. Right. Now, if we only have this Gemara mentioned on the Mishnah, then could be Rav Ashi would be moided that you do have a riot from the Brycer, because he couldn't be marked to the Brycer, that he didn't really think she was a Psula, because there were Eidim. But the first Nusach that we had, even if she had Eidim, we say that the husband wasn't relying on him. And like Tosha says, either because maybe the Eidim were just saying it to be Meshabecher, or maybe because in the Suah itself loses the Maila of Basulam, even though she's Taka Basula, but she's no longer considered undamaged goods. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I said over yesterday, I had a friend who got married to a woman who her marriage broke up the day after, probably the night of, but they had to get her ready the first day of Sheva Brachos. And when my friend got engaged to her, my friend was running after her even before she got engaged. And now that she didn't want him. Now that she was in Megadesh, she took him. Right? What? It was your Charusa. So he told me, and I knew what, because I was in the middle of ready to Meshidach, this guy, and he was almost a chusin, and all of a sudden, boom, he dumps her. I didn't know why. 2 weeks later, he's engaged to another girl. So he tells me, don't think Stam dumped her. Batsam, she was a good girl. Novus, I wanted this girl for years already. They didn't want to look at me, but she just got divorced, and now she wants me. So Mamaila, so he tells me, but I have a star from Besden as Yinacha Basila. So even though they had the chasna, they went to the chuppah, but he said, I have a star that she's still a basula. So I told him, there's a halucha roi bilas acharval. I'm without unkimin today. Lamasa, they lived together for like 15, 20 years. They had a mishpucha and kinder, and then they beat the living daylights out of him to give a get. So that marriage did not end well. Okay. I'm sorry. No. The andere Baruch Hashem had continued Zaira find the shidduch and Yochachaschem Kinderlach, and they're happily married. I have a close relationship to the andere. Oh, they were somewhat related to me. I'm sorry, but that didn't last very long either. That's right. Okay, and the girl who he was supposed to, who dumped because he wanted her, that girl also married a tractor boy. So the Torah is very connected to this story. Okay, Zok the Gemara weiter. Zok the Heilige Mishnah weiter. We have this Mishnah. Someone ate by Yishver and Yehuda. Remember, in Yehuda, the minhag was that they would be miyachet together. Shaloi be'edim, and there were no edim. Then Einoi yochal liter in tanis b'sulam. He's forfeited his right to ever make tanis b'sulam. The pneishim is yachid ima because they're miyachet. Now, isn't it weird? Why would they do that in Yehuda? Anybody know why in Yehuda they would be miyachet? So the Mefarshim say that most of the horrible gzeres that happened on Klal Yisrael happened in Yehuda. And in Yehuda, there was the gzer, like we learned earlier, of Shati Boyel Lahegmon Tchila. So because of that, there's two svaras that are offered in the Rishonim. One svar is that a woman could likely develop a love for the person who takes away her basulam. And we're afraid, chas v'sholem, that if she's tiboy lehegmon tchila, which is the first intimacy she ever had, would have been with the hegmon, it would permanently damage their marriage. So because of that, we would dafka wanted them to be miyached before, so it should be libay gaspa. Why do we want libay gaspa? Because we want her first relationship to really develop with her Jewish chassan, not chas v'sholem, maybe have even the smallest bit of desire for this hegmon. That was one svar. The other svar is they were hoping that if the hegmon would find out that there was yichud, the hegmon was the duke of the neighborhood, had a right. They would encourage her that before a Jewish girl got married, she had to spend the night with the duke. So that's why the Gemara says in such a case, then you don't have to get married on Wednesday night. You can get married on Tuesday night, so the duke won't come, right? He won't come to the village to chop this girl. Such a balpai is not unless he's guaranteed to have his date. So the other story is we actually didn't even care if there was a biyah. We wanted it to be fuzzy because once there was a biyah, then the hegman wouldn't be interested in it. The hegman b'dafka wanted a basula. So once there was some relationship there, it's not clear what it was. Maybe the hegman wants. Correct.
Like the Shabbos Gehenna.
Well, that's how they made Shabbos Kenim, the Shabbos Kenim. Okay. Zog to Gemara weiter. Zog to Gemara. I think that's the third part of the Rishonim. Zog to Gemara weiter. Midikatani ha'oichel. It says, "Punkt in Yehuda if you happen to have done it." Vice the Chayst, it's not done across the board. It's only some people who do this in Yehuda. Machlal dika duchta b'Yehuda nami deloyach. It's mashma that there are places in Yehuda where they didn't do this. You see that even in Yehuda, it wasn't across the board that the chasm was miyachid with the kala. There's different places had different minhag. Kinetanya like we do. Rabbi Yehuda. Yehuda in Yehuda, Rishon miyachid and sechasm was a kala. Shah achas koidem knisas l'chofa. Why? Kedei sheyeh liboy gaspa. So there should be this relationship. They should be more comfortable together.
It doesn't mean right before the Christmas. Sometimes.
That's correct. But it could even mean right before the Kippur because then the Hegman would have wanted it. Uve Galil, not enough time before that would be before the Hegman would come. Uve Galil, in Galil, they didn't do that. Originally, they used to make Shnei Shvinin, Echad Loi Vechad La, to watch to make sure if there's any dam, they can hold on to it so it won't get lost. So that they could have proof. So why would they have a shushvin by her? By her there'd be a shushvin. He would set up a shushvin to make sure that if let's say she's a bula, so she knows she's going to get caught the first night. So what she'll do is she'll bring with her a shmata that has blood on it, and she'll slip it in there, and then she'll say, "Ah, you see, there was dam." So he was miming a shushvin for her to watch her to make sure she wasn't going to slip in another sheet, and they were also miming a shushvin on him so that right after the biyah they would wipe him to see if there's any dam there, so he shouldn't be able to deny that there was dam. So both parties, they had such a wonderful trusting relationship already going into the wedding that each person needed a supervisor, an agent, to make sure that the vote, that the election results were going to be sound. Two extra kibudim, that's right. There's two extra kibudim, but a chuppah. That's right. Two extra kibudim. What they used to do is the 8 kedushin that he dealt to was the shushan for her, and the 8 kedushin she dealt to was shushan for him, because they each representing their party. But a kolpam, I don't understand. If we don't even assume there's basulam because they were miyachid together, what are the shushminim for? They might have been a be along before the chuppah. So that's how you see that not in all places in Yehuda did they have that minhag. Because if they had that minhag, there's no reason to have shishriyan, because we're not even assuming that she's a basulam anymore. And Galil didn't do that. A third thing, they had to get a 2-room suite. Sorry? That's right. Sure. You think I made this up? Of course. Right? So Zok Gemara, in those days, when you took a hotel, you had to take a 2-room suite. You know why? Because the Shishrim came into the hotel suite with them. Right? In the Galil, they only had to take a single-room suite. And anybody who did not fear zich like this, so let's focus. If you didn't fear zich like this, then you can't tie in time special. Now there were 3 different minhagim that we've just discussed in the brisa. There's the minhag that there's a yichud before the chuppah. There's the minhag that there's shusfin, and there's the minhag that shusfin slept with them in the same house. So the question is, which of the 3 minhagim are we referring to? Ahaya. If it's talking about the Reisha, which says that there was yichud before the chuppah, so it's not kosher loy noach k'minhag hazeh, whoever didn't have yichud before the chuppah, kosher noach b'boilei. The Brisa should have said, whoever feared zich to have bia before the chuppah, or to have yichud before the chuppah, there's no time to pursue. So that's not what the Brisa could be referred to. That's not how it was. They didn't have yichud. That's not how it was. Yeah, they ate him inside. Ella a seifa. So maybe when it says v'chol shaloi noach k'minhag hazeh is referring to the seifa, which is that they used to have shnei shishvin, echad loy, ve'echad la till a mashma shesachasam zakala. So zokt the Gemara, that wouldn't make sense either, because it should say kol shaloi mushmash miboilei. It doesn't make a difference if he was mimana a shliach to watch to make sure that she doesn't smuggle in dam. Even if he didn't do that, he could still tiny pesulim if there's no dam there at all, right? All the guy that he appoints is to make sure she doesn't smuggle in a pre-bloodied cloth. But that's not relevant. Even if it's not there, if she cannot show any dam, if she didn't smuggle anything in, then he should have a tanis pesulim, because there's no dam there. So what it really means is kol shalei mushmush b'boilei. It doesn't depend on whether or not he made a shliach. The most important thing is if she didn't make a shliach. If she didn't make a shliach to examine him right after the bia, then he can't take psulim, because maybe even though there's no dam on the sheets, maybe there's dam on his aver that he concealed. But if she made a shliach and they can't show any dam, then there's a time psulim. So it should have said kol shalei mushmash b'boilei. Only if he didn't have somebody watching him, only there is there no tainus pasulim. So Amar Abaye, I'll tell you what it means. L'olam ha'reisha. It's really going on the reisha, but don't say kol loy nog. There's no din pasulim. It's v'tani kol shanag. Whoever feared zich in Yehuda that allowed yichud before the chuppah forfeited the right to tainus pasulim. Zok to Gemara Amalei Rabba. Rabba said, but it's a very nice pshat. It just doesn't say that. Well, kol shaloy nog katani. Amar Rabba hachikamer. This is how you read it. Kol shaloy nog. Mina Galil, the Galil, and the minig Yehuda begalil. Anybody who didn't fear zich like the minig of Galil in Galil, and the minig in Galil was not to allow them to be miyachid before the chuppah, and rather in Galil they allowed a chosim to be miyachid with the kala before the chuppah. There ain't a yachal litay tanis pesulim. So it's going on Galil, not on Yehuda. The kol shaloi nog. If you didn't do the minig of the city, which is not to do yichud, then you forfeited the right to tanis pesulim. It's really going on the seifa. V'tani kol shaloi mushmash. and say don't say kol shalei nog, change it to kol shalei mushmash, which I guess Rava wouldn't like either because that's not what it says. Okay, so achas almonas Yisrael, achas almonas kaihanim. It doesn't make a difference if it's almonas Yisrael or almonas kaihanim. And Rashi says almonas kaihanim doesn't mean the widow of a kohen. It means a widow who is also the daughter of a kohen. So say the almana if she's a bas Yisrael, achas almonas kaihanim, and say if she was a kohenes that married and became an almana, Kesubos almana, Kesubos still almana. But Bezdin shel Kohanim, the Bezdin of Kohanim, they wanted to protect their girls, and they demanded more of a ksuba for their girls. So if it was a bas kohen, no matter who she married, they would demand 400 zuz for the ksuba. And the chachamim said, no problem. If that's what you want to demand for your girls, that's what you could demand for your girls. Tana we learned. The Gemara is going to explain why. Tana, the almanas kohanim, the almana of a kohen would be ksubasa masai, because if the basula gets 400 and the almana normally is half of the basula gets 200. Frank the Gemara, is that so? We learned a different brisa that said achas almanas Yisrael, the yachad almanas kohanim, ksubasa almana. We learned almana only gets a mana, not masai, which is half of what a basula will get. So what is it? Amr Abashi, state takanas happen. There were two takanas. This is, you can't say this, not you cannot say this by a Yiddish Bezdin, but this is where you see when governments mix in and they fiddle with things, it makes it worse. When the government decided to do all these programs and rebates on electricity, what it ended up causing was that our electricity rates skyrocketed. Now, the more the government touches, the more problems they make. Right? President Reagan once said, "There's nothing more fearsome than a guy from the government who knocks on your door and says, 'I have a solution for your problem.'" Right? That's the most dangerous thing in the world. I probably didn't quote it accurately, but that's what.
Scariest words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
The scariest word in the English language is, "I'm from the government. I'm here to help." Exactly. So look at this takana. At first, they were masakin that a basula gets arba me'os, so they only up the ksuba for a basula of a bas kohen. But if the bas kohen became an almana, she would be like any other widow. That's what they did at first. But that had unintended consequences. And what happened was, even the chazu, the mezalzel lebuhu, now they saw that people were being mezalzel in the almanas of the kohanim. Now, what was the zilzel? It's a machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. Tosfos says they were very easily able to get rid of almanos because they saw how much less the suba of an almana, a bas kohen, was from the basula. Went from 400 to 100, so that made them cheap. Tosfos doesn't like that pshat because they knew, or they already knew right away that everybody knows that the ksuba of an almana is a mana. So that wouldn't be a reason for zilzal. So Tosfos says that the zilzal is because some people didn't want to marry them because the ksuba of the almana was only a quarter of what a basula would get, and that made them less desirable. In other words, if you lease a car and there's a really bad depreciation on it, if there's not such a bad depreciation on it, so then you'll take a used car lease. But if there's a terrible depreciation, nobody wants to take something that had a terrible depreciation. So what do? They had to up the ksuba of the almana because people were being mizazel on the almanas that were bas kohen. So tikinu lamasa, and then they realized that was also a problem. Even the chazan, the kaparshim inayu, people were saying, if I'm looking for a used car, why should I pay $200 for the used car if I can get it for 100? The Amri Adin Asin Almanas Kaihanim, and I have to give 200. Nezel v'nezel b'sula bas Yisrael. It's more than that. Why would I pay $200 for a used car, a bas kohen, if I can take that same money and buy a new car and get a basula? So because of that, it caused problems again. So therefore, Hadrini Limel Sayu, they went back and put it back to Amana. So it was a development. So at the end of the day, what occurred is the basulas that got 400 didn't change. The question was the almanas. So at first they upped almanas to 200, and then they dropped it back down to 1. Bezin Shokayim. I'm Rabbi Yudah Shmuel. Loi bezin zakonim b'vad amru. It's not this. This is the what happened, but it's not only exclusive to Bas Kohen. Elafilu mishpachas hamiyichashes b'Yisrael. Any mishpacha that wants to up their charge for ksuba, everybody has the right to ask for more ksuba. If someone wants to do like the Kohanim did, who could do it? Could go in either Bas Yisrael L'Kohen. If it was Bas Yisrael marrying a Kohen, she can ask for more ksuba, or Bas Kohen Yisrael can ask. There it's oisin. So if you notice, what's glaringly missing is a Bas Yisrael to Yisrael. So we're Medai. Bas Yisrael L'Kohen, Bas Kohen Yisrael who the Ika Tat Kahuna. There, where there's a Tat Kahuna involved, either the Mechatanim or Kohanim, or the girl comes from a family of Kohanim, only there do you see that the Brisa allows to up the ksuba.
How?
Right.
Why? What kind of does Bas Yisrael have for a kind? She's worth more.
I don't know. I don't know. Aval Bas Yisrael, but a Bas Yisrael to Yisrael, loy. So you have a raya from here against what Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel said, that even mishpachas miyuchas is Yisrael. So let me boy come. It's saying let me boy Bas Yisrael to Yisrael. For sure, a Bas Yisrael to Yisrael has a right to demand more ksuba. The loymotzi amarla iluya kamalilach. They can't tell her, I'm not giving you more ksuba. Who do you think you are? Right? We're helping you out, but by Bas Yisrael to Yisrael, they're both on equal ground. So I can't tell you that there's any great thing about marrying me. I'm a regular Yisrael like you are. So therefore, it's pashut that they could ask. I will Bas Yisrael a kohen, but if she's marrying a kohen and then she comes and demands, I want more ksuba money, the motzi they'll tell her, we're not giving you more ksuba money. You're getting an upgrade just from the fact that you're marrying a kohen. For instance, you're now allowed to eat truma, and up until now you couldn't have eaten truma. So that should be enough of an upgrade for you. So you're not getting more truma. Amaloi, maybe you won't allow them to demand more truma. Kamash Malon, even if the family, the cousin can tell them, be happy with what we're giving you. We're giving you an upgrade. You don't need the 400. Kamash Malon, even there they can ask for 400. But Kol Shekain, Bas Yisrael, she could say, Yisrael is a dime a dozen. I can find someone else. You got to pay me 400 for truma. Zok to Gemara. Anoi says to Isha, someone married a woman and found out that she was not a basura. She says, I was nenas. So I'm not also to you, but I was nenas before the kedushin. I'm sorry, after the kedushin. And I feel bad for you that your wife was raped, but it's too bad for you. It's no different than your field getting battered. But who I he said, no. You became a be'ula, you were raped before I made Erishin, and you concealed it. And therefore, it's a mekachtos. And if you remember, we had this mission already, and we said that if it's a man being boiler, then it's taka mekachtos. But we said that if it was a mukasech, then maybe it wouldn't be a mekachtos. Right? We had that child to be. So he said, so what is the halacha? She is believed, and since she's believed, she still gets her ksuba, and it's not a mekachtos. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, let me pee on the chayim. We can't trust her. Ella harezu becheskas bu'ula. We assume that she was a bu'ula at shaloy tesaris. We believe that she was nenas even before the kedushin. The hitasai, and she cheated him because she was really a bu'ula, and she said that she was a basula. Achatavi the raya l'dorea. She had to bring a raya that she was a basula when she got married, and if she cannot, then she doesn't get her ksuba. It's a mekachtos. Zok Gemara Itmar. We'll just learn a couple of more lines and we'll stop. Itmar, mana li biyotcha. What if I go to, Reuben goes over to Shimon and tells Shimon, you owe me $500. Well, and Shimon says, on your day, I don't remember borrowing any money from you. I'm not sure. I don't know. So you have a Teveya who's Bari, and you have a Nitva who's Shema. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Huna Amri. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Huna says, Chayiv, since the Teveya is Bari, therefore he gets to force the Shema to pay him. Let's think about our case. The Teveya was a Shema in our case, or the Teveya is a Bari. She's being Teveya Ksuba. So she's saying, Bari, I know that I was Nenas after the Kedushin, and you owe me the full Ksuba, right? He's a Shema, because he can't know when it happened. He just knows that now she's a Buddha. So in the case of Bari B'Shema, we seem to have in our Mishnah, Rabbi Gamliel says, Bari B'Shema, Bari Adaf. Rabbi Gamliel says she's believed and she gets the full ksuba. Rabbi Yeshua said, no, let me pay the chayim. And therefore she has to bring a raya. So that's why we're leading into this shaila. Manali biyotcha v'lay omer, en yedeir, Rabbi Yehuda amichayim, Bari B'Shema, Bari Adaf. Rabbi Nachman, Rabbi Yochanan, Ami, Potter, in fact, the nitfas Potter with his taina of Shema. Rav Huna, Rabbi Yehuda amichayim, because Bari B'Shema, Bari Adaf. Rabbi Nachman, Rabbi Yochanan, Potter, because Uki Mammon the B'chaskas Marei, you go Basar Chazaka. Amle Baila Rabbi Yosef, Had Rav Huna, Rabbi Yehuda, the Shmueli. Rav Huna and Rabbi Yehuda stem with Shmuel, who holds Bari B'Shema, Bari Adaf, and you see that Shmuel holds this way from the way he understood our Mishnah, because he said it's not. We're going to learn tomorrow. Haisa Muberes. What if she was Muberes? Bezin sees the single girl is pregnant. Or Amrullah, they ask her, Mati Vaishal Uberzeh. Exactly how did you become pregnant? Who's the father of this child? In other words, is this child mutter l'kahuna or not? Or do we have to assume that you were impregnated by someone who would have been pasal l'kahuna? So she said, Maish plani v'koinu. This is the father, whether he denies it or not. This is the father, the koinu. And Rashi told us on the Mishnah, it doesn't lav dafka that he's a kohen, but his children would be kosher l'kahuna. So Rabbi Gamliel, she's believed to say that this child is kosher l'kahuna. And Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel said, halacha k'Rabbi Gamliel. Halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel over there in that case, because she's not meant to say that the father is kosher l'kahuna. She's a pnui shenitzah. It doesn't make a black pogum unless she was mizana with a goy or some other person who's also there. But if she was mizana with a kosher Yisrael, then the child is mutar l'kahuna. V'amar lei Rabbi Shmuel by Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Shmuel by Yehuda told Rabbi Yehuda, Shinin a sharp one. I'll tell you even a bigger chiddush. Amar Ton, you told us a bigger chiddush. Mishmei Shmuel, that what? That halacha k'Rabbi Gamliel afer rishoina. The halacha of Gamliel, even in the first Mishnah, which is referring to our Mishnah, my afer rishoina. What does it mean? Why is our Mishnah a bigger chiddush that she's believed versus the second Mishnah, where she's also believed? In our case, she's believed to say that the rape happened after she was murezus. In the next Mishnah, she's believed to say who the father of the child was. Why is one a bigger chiddush than the other? Because in our Mishnah, the chiddush is bigger because ba'afal gav dikal amemer ukamam b'chaskus mare. In our case, it impacts our financial transaction. It impacts our ksuba. In the case of if we want to know if the child is mutter or also takoin, okay, it's a child of Isra Ve'eter, but it's a child of Mamnis, and we're trusting her to force her husband to give her ksuba. So you see, Bari V'Shema, Bari Adav, even to be moitzi money from a muhsik. Okay, so let's even there, Amar Gamliel Bari Adav. Even in a case where Bari V'Shema, we are moitzi money from a muhsik, we make the guy pay a higher ksuba because she is a bari. So that supports the svara of Rabbi Huna and Rabbi Yehuda who say Bari V'Shema Bari Adav. Okay, we'll stop here. Tomorrow? Oh, we're going to now? Sure.